The dynamic and relationship between Mordecai and Rigby have gone through many different stages, both good and bad. And throughout the show, not only do we see how they grow as friends, but also how they grow as individuals. Both characters go through various phases and personal arcs that shape them into the characters we know and love. But for the most part, Mordecai was always seen as the superior half of the popular duo, or at least more respected and liked in the earlier seasons. But it wasn't really Mordecai's accomplishments that put him in this pedestal, but actually the lack of work ethic and incompetence from Rigby, seemingly always relying on Mordecai and usually dragging him into his own personal consequences or poor choices. But this all changed later on and was solidified in one episode in particular, and we finally see the moment Rigby surpassed Mordecai. This episode is called Rigby's Graduation Special and is actually the last episode of Season 7. And we see High Five Ghost blowing a dandelion and the camera follows one of the seeds, showing the happiness and relaxed state the characters are feeling, as well as a flyer inviting people to celebrate Rigby's graduation on Sunday. And before the seed reaches the main duo, it lands on Benson's car, who is seen talking to one of the dome workers who tells them that they are done working and will be out of their hair soon, which officially gives Benson the green light to ask Pam out since she won't be tied with work anymore. And we see the seed take flight as it is taken by the wind, but suddenly flies into Rigby's mouth, causing him to lose a game against Mordecai. But it doesn't seem to bother him at all, since he's graduating the next day and is too excited to feel any other type of way. He also asks Mordecai if he's ready to party, and it replies with a simple "of course," and reveals that he's actually on the planning committee as well. And Rigby begins to talk about his achievements and how proud he is of himself for learning a lot this past year, realizing he's come a long way, and even jokes about the possible chance he earns a college degree before Mordecai. And although an obvious joke, this still gets to Mordecai, and he tells Rigby how good he's gone at his video game this past year. And we see him do a classic Mordecai smile, trying to compensate for the fact that he didn't really do too much compared to Rigby, but he's interrupted when Rigby gets a phone call by Principal Dean telling him to come to the school as he has something deadly serious to tell him. So as he walks off, Mordecai jokes about Rigby's graduation getting cancelled, and after a few fake laughs, he's actually seen feeling pretty down about the whole situation. Once at school, Rigby confronts Principal Dean as he believes the deadly serious news is bad news, but he reassures him that it's actually good news. But I mean, come on, who words it like that? Well, apparently Dean does, because he tells Rigby that the television show Inspire America wants to broadcast Rigby giving his graduation speech on the news, as most high school dropouts don't return unlike him. But Rigby begins to worry as graduation is tomorrow and he doesn't have a lot of time to prepare. But Principal Dean comforts Rigby by letting him know that if he messes this up for him, then he will literally eat his diploma. Yeah, and he double downs too. He tells him again he's going to eat his diploma if he messes this up. So to make the most out of the remaining time left, Rigby decides to go to Eileen's house and watch a few episodes of Inspire America, which consists of people saying something inspirational and then dancing after. But after finishing the episode and seeing Margaret's reaction, he starts to feel more pressure to write an awesome speech. But Eileen calms him down by reminding him of how cool the opportunity is for him, and sadly wishes she could attend, but is unfortunately graduating from college at the same time he is. But Rigby lets her know that they'll party together after their graduation, and this is when we see Rigby drop potentially one of the most profound sentences he has ever muttered. But just as he is asked if that's the beginning of his speech, he obviously says no. And I mean, who are we kidding? This is the same person who ate an omelet and was taken to the hospital because he forgot he was allergic to eggs. But to continue in Rigby fashion, he does show them the actual introduction of his speech, which consists of a loud microphone, a scooter, and sparklers. But Rigby ends up tripping and falling on his face before he could truly begin, and by the judge of the look on Mordecai's face, he is both unamused and not surprised. So to try and salvage the act, Rigby attempts to hype the crowd up, which Margaret and Eileen play along, but then he stops, as that's all he's got so far. And the trio politely lets him know in their own way that it isn't good. So he has to show his outro to see if it's any better, and as you can probably assume, it's not. Back at the park, we see most of the workers gathering some of Rigby's favorite items until Mordecai shows up quite annoyed. Most of them ask him what food does Rigby like, and Mordecai irritatingly mentions a soda called Coffini. And as soon as Skips hands him his keys to buy some, he says it's seasonal, and he'll have to drive all the way to the outlet to even get any. And High Five Ghost also reminds him that Rigby would appreciate the effort. But Mordecai is fed up. He exclaims the needlessness of celebrating a high school graduation since it's the least a person can accomplish. But Fives and Muscle Man let him know that it's a big deal for Rigby, especially because it's his best friend, and they're shocked they even have to explain it to him. So Mordecai takes the keys and complains before he storms off. While on the road, Mordecai receives a phone call from Rigby, who is freaking out because he can't seem to write a good speech and tells Mordecai that he really needs him. But Mordecai tells him that he can't help him because he's busy, and although Rigby tells Mordecai that he doesn't know what to do, Mordecai tells Rigby that if he's so smart, he should be able to do it himself, and even tells him to listen to a sad song and figure it out. Obviously baffled by his response, Mordecai hangs up before Rigby has a chance to say something. But Rigby decides to take his advice and plays a song that transitions into a montage of both characters. On Rigby's side, we see him taking notes, practicing his speech, and eventually finding the inspiration from another public speaker. And on Mordecai's side, we see him driving past some interesting signs until he comes across a billboard of Rigby, which angers him. And shortly after, we see a tumbleweed pop his tire, and he is forced to walk to the outlet and sleep on the floor when he realizes that he has to wait till the next morning. Now skip forward to the next day of the graduation, we see Principal Dean introducing Rigby to the stage, and for some reason, Rigby decided to wear a banana suit and ride on a Segway, and once again, he crashes, this time crashing into other students and hurting Eileen. And before he gets a chance to do anything, the Inspire America host demands a speech from him, which he completely butchers, and as the crowd boos, Dean is seen eating his diploma, and just before things could get even worse, he wakes up. Yeah, luckily for Rigby, it was all a dream. But once he's up, he realizes Mordecai still isn't back and decides to give him a call. Mordecai answers the call, and the two immediately start arguing. Rigby asks Mordecai what he is up to and if he's almost done, but Mordecai tells him that he's not, and Rigby asks him what is he doing that's so important, which Mordecai lets him know that Rigby needs to do this for himself and he can't do everything for him, which annoys Rigby, and he claims that he's been doing everything for himself all spring and has never needed his help until now. But Mordecai tells Rigby that he won't receive his help this time and throws the sodas out the window that he purchased, confirming he's done helping him and hangs up, which is honestly insane if you think about it. But now it's the time of, and every one of Rigby's family and friends is gathered to watch the ceremony. And the countdown begins for the broadcast, and the host introduces the school and student along with Principal Dean introducing Rigby personally, but is shocked to see a helicopter flying over the stage, which is none other than Chopper 6. And as Rigby is about to make his way down, he falls on the stage, dropping his notes, which actually makes this the third time he's fallen this episode, but he quickly recovers and is met with cheers from his fellow classmates. So Rigby makes his way to the podium with his notes, but instantly starts choking up from all the eyes and pressure. He attempts to read his speech, but is missing details he was relying on Mordecai for, and everyone is forced to watch his very awkward and uncomfortable presentation from Rigby. And even Mordecai is seen listening from the parking lot, just cringing and feeling bad for his friend. And before things could get even worse, Rigby decides to run backstage, and Principal Dean attempts to distract the crowd with a few words and birds. And while he's doing that, Rigby is seen whimpering and dying from embarrassment until Mordecai shows up with his favorite drink, letting him know that it went out of his way to get it from the outlet just for him. And as Rigby takes a sip, Mordecai tells him that he was actually mad at him, and Rigby claims he knew but was unsure of the reason why. Mordecai explains that he's been going through a rough couple of days because it's been difficult watching Rigby develop and do great things, even admitting that he liked the fact that he was always doing better than Rigby, and only realized how unfair he was being when he heard Rigby embarrassing himself on stage, which is pretty bad. And then he compliments Rigby on his hard work and hypes him up a bit, and Rigby begins to feel better and cuts Mordecai off before he is able to say another word and proceeds to make his way back to the stage. The crowd cheers as he steps onto the podium and he begins his very popular speech. He begins by apologizing for suddenly leaving and saying he isn't good at speeches and other things like high school, but he still decided to attend because he wanted to accomplish something, and although he initially did it in order to impress his girlfriend, he soon found out that there was more to it. And even though he took what he deemed were the easiest routes to get his diploma, he still had work to do and found it difficult. But once he did the hard work, it became not hard. And although he changed since the beginning of his journey, he was still the same person, but better. He also realized that he didn't need anyone or do things for anyone but himself. The impressive atmospheric environment his family and friends admit was the inspiration that showed him that it is possible to accomplish difficult and grand tasks, and that he also plays a small part in inspiring people all over the world, which in time will inspire even more people. And as he is wrapping up his speech, people start getting up and cheering and even dancing too. His family and friends sharing the same look on their face, both equally as proud of him, and Principal Dean is seen handing Rigby his hard-earned diploma after many years. And then the episode wraps up with a setup for the next and final season of the show. But what did we learn from this episode? Throughout the episode, we see the bitter and envious emotions slowly emerge from Mordecai, struggling to deal with the reality that Rigby is growing and is capable of doing great things on his own. And although Rigby was aware that Mordecai was annoyed at him, he was still on his best behavior and didn't take things personally like a good friend. Even after he heard Mordecai admit that he was upset because Rigby was doing better than him, Rigby wasn't angry. Rigby has passed the childlike behavior and realizes that although Mordecai was in the wrong, there wasn't any need for Rigby to get upset with him. He has reached a maturity level and personal control over himself that early season Rigby wouldn't have been able to manage, which was also told in his speech. When he was speaking from his heart and speaking his truth, he said that he didn't need anyone to do anything. He doesn't need Mordecai as an emergency clutch anymore, and finally sees himself as an independent person, truly separating himself from Mordecai. Well guys, it looks like that'll be it for today. I'm going to stick with longer videos now and sprinkle in a few news related pieces of content here and there. Please make sure to share any of your personal thoughts or opinions on this episode in the comments below. Like the video if you enjoyed and subscribe if you would like to see more. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Later.